There's something that is the ATF is doing that is absolutely beyond the realm. While you feel less safe because more criminals are on the streets, because the DA's office, usually when the office is controlled by George Soros, they are just letting criminals go. The DA used to be the guy who would stand up for the victim. But now we've switched that with disregard to, thousands of years of precedent of showing that when the prosecuting attorney, when the DA, if you will, when that person that is declared by law to clean up crime, when they are clean and they are looking to defend the victim, things are great. When they're dirty, or they just have just a sweet, sweet spirit for, the criminals and disregard the victim, society falls apart. Well, that's what's happening because, again, we're not applying any common sense. We're listening to, quote, men of science when we now know men of science have been totally corrupted. The ATF has just put a new rule out. It puts 40 million people at risk of being felons. Joe Biden instructed the ATF, a bunch of unelected bureaucrats that you don't know their name. You didn't see this process. Nobody voted on this process. But thanks to Woodrow Wilson, we have an out-of-control administrative arm, and now the ATF is just making up new laws. They have finalized a rule that will turn 40 million Americans into somebody that can be hauled off to prison. They have reclassified firearms with pistol braces as short-barreled rifles. Okay, short-barreled rifles are illegal. You can get a special stamp for them. The ATF, if you have any kind of special weapon, you have an old Gatling gun, you have an automatic rifle, you have to have an ATF stamp. You get it from the government. They do months of investigation on you to make sure that you're going to be safe with that. And then it has all kinds of rules that if you don't keep it safe, if you're traveling without it, you hand it to somebody else who's not on your stamp, that you and they can go to prison. I mean, it's crazy. Now, they have just decided that these guns that were legal to buy are not going to be grandfathered in. They were absolutely legal to buy. They now have to be surrendered to the ATF. So you have to give them to the ATF, or you have to ask for the stamp, and you'll have 120 days to come into a compliance. Either give them the gun or get the stamp. As someone who has one of those stamps but would have to apply for a new stamp for a gun like this, I can guarantee you there's no way in hell that you're going to get that stamp in 120 days. There's no way. First of all, they have to issue 40 million. Now, as somebody who has done this under the Obama administration, it took me 8 months, closer probably to a year, to get that stamp. Never thought it would ever come, honestly. Now, they have rules. They have to do it within, 200 days or whatever it is. They have to issue that stamp. Otherwise, it's their fault. And I'm going to call the police. What am I going to do? They issue it when they want to issue it. So you have to now either say, I want to get a stamp. Here are my fingerprints. Here's a picture of the gun. Here's where I'm keeping it. Here's all of my information. You send it in, and I want to get that stamp. But if you don't have the stamp, in 120 days, you're a felon. You're committing a felony. Now, you could say this is they just overlooked that. They just didn't think that one through. But that's the way it's written. There's no out. It's not like, oh, well, you're in the process for getting a stamp. No. In 120 days, you're just a felon. Now, they're not going to arrest they're not going to arrest 40 million people. But I can guarantee you they'll arrest some. So what do? Do you apply for the stamp that you're not going to get, at least in 120 days, and roll the dice? Are you going to turn that gun into the ATF? I don't even know how to call the ATF. Are they in the phone book? I don't. Where are they? How do I turn that in? It seems a little German, if I remember my history right. Hey, turn your guns in. But then if you were in the street with the gun, that was illegal. Then they could legally shoot you. I kind of remember something like that. I'd like to make sure that doesn't happen again. How do you do that? And are they going to have 40 million people do it? By the way, this is just the gateway drug. This is just the gateway, okay? This isn't a machine gun or anything else. This is a gun that is about the size of a very larger than a very large pistol, okay? And the stock goes into the gun. It collapses into itself. So you could use it, as like a pistol, but it's built to put up against your shoulder. And anybody who knows anything about guns, if you're using one of these, you better just be spraying everything with bullets because you're not going to be very accurate. And they're not machine guns, so you're not spraying them. Anyway, these were perfectly legal. Now it's 10 years in jail and a $10,000 fine. So you just have to reclassify now. I don't remember anything where we've ever done this before. Maybe we have. If anybody can remember, I'd love to hear from you, but I don't think they've ever done this before. It's always been grandfathered.
And this also seems like the type of thing we have a big debate about. We have a bill that's proposed. It goes through a process. People need to vote on it. Like, what is this process? All of a sudden, this stuff, there's just 40 million illegal people they've created out of thin air? That seems like that doesn't seem like how our government runs. Is there a court challenge that we can?
No, and I think that's what people are waiting for is a court challenge. But luckily, all my guns. Unfortunately, all my guns.
Yeah, you said luckily. What you meant was unfortunately.
Unfortunately,
all your guns. What?
All my guns are at the bottom of a lake. I was up. I was gonna take them and throw them off the top of Mount Crumpet.
Really?
Yeah, just take those guns and dump them. And on the way, they just slid down and they all went to the bottom of this lake.
Do you remember which lake? We could look for.
I can't. It was somewhere around Mount Crumpet.
Okay, we could just
look that up. That's at least where I remember the name, but it might not have been the name of the mountain. I don't know. I've got to call and report those all at the bottom of the lake.
I just don't understand. Again, there are these protections, but like the Second Amendment, I think quite clearly protects these things. You can't do this. I think we've already done far too much. The process you had to go through should not have existed in the first place. And I think, there have been attempts to overturn things like the automatic weapons ban, for example, which again, you can say you don't want automatic weapons in this country. It's a very maybe even sensible view. However, you can't just overwhelm constitutional amendments with what you want.
So, but this is the problem here. No matter what Joe Biden says, and no matter what, common sense would tell you, and only the people without common sense will tell you common sense says this. Joe Biden, you're going to need F-16s and you're going to need tanks to fight the United States. Really? Because the Taliban did a pretty good job? They're back in power. Who would have thunk it? They didn't have F-16s.
Well, they do now, obviously.
Well,
because we left
of course.
it there. But
Then
still,
now,
then
at the
they
end, if you just have some old weapons that barely function, you can beat the United States, and then you get the good stuff at the end.
It's really difficult to go door to door to take out a population that is at war with you. By the way, of course, this is a ridiculous scenario. That's what they want you to do. They want you to believe, like, think of yourself and look down your driveway, and here comes a bunch of tanks, and all you have is this gun. You can't do anything. Oh, then that situation would be very difficult. But, of course, going door to door and trying to clear a city of people fighting back against you, which obviously this is all stuff we hope never, ever occurs, and would only occur if they went down this road even farther, right? The people would not... we're not at the verge of, as much as it feels like it at times, we're not about to have a civil war. Let's calm down a little bit here. Let's not have a civil war. That's really, really bad. You really, really don't want to be at war with your government. It's really, really bad.
Doesn't usually work out for anybody.
Anybody, ever. It's really terrible. But like this idea that you can't stop a more powerful force with small arms, it's just not
ridiculous.
It's not true. And like what? Yes, I guess in
How
theory,
about David and Goliath?
Yeah, it's kind of a fundamental story to the human experience. But I mean, what are you going to do? Yes, you could, I guess, nuke every single city, right? You could nuke everyone and kill all your allies and your opponents, right? And then what are you ruling over? A nuclear wasteland? Like I don't understand. This is just a ridiculous argument to make you not think. Having the ability to protect yourself against a government that could go into tyranny is exactly why you don't have tyranny. That's why it happens, because you have that ability. It's why we are still on the same constitution from hundreds of years ago, and every other country on earth has switched numerous times. This is an important part of our culture and our foundation, and we need to keep it.
Yeah, I just don't understand. Other than they are trying to disarm you. The only reason why we haven't fallen into real tyranny is because the government still kind of fears you. Okay, used to fear you at the election, at the ballot. I'm not sure that really is there anymore. They used to fear you. Giant corporations used to fear you because you could stop buying stuff. I'm not sure, because now the government will just partner with them and they'll buy the stuff. They are trying to take away everything that gives you at least a chance to give them pause. That's all it is. And that's why the Second Amendment is there. And that should never be infringed. My question is, if you have one of these guns, what are you going to do? They're called now short-barreled rifles because the government has changed that. But they're these little, like, they're AR-15s, but they have a collapsible stock. So it comes out, pulls out, and it just makes it smaller, easier to carry, and everything else. But I don't even understand this. The ATF, have they passed this or not? Decided. I have read this two ways, that they have already decided, and the 120 days is starting soon, if not now. And then the other is, well, they haven't officially decided. But they're saying at the same time, if you want to avoid 10 years in jail and have a potential $10,000 fine, you must reclassify your legally obtained weapon as short-barreled rifles. And you have to do that through the tax stamp system, which is the worst. It'll take you months. With this administration...
It sounds like it's something out of the revolutionary times.
Oh, it's horrible.
The tax stamp system?
It's horrible.
It seems like something like people with powdered wigs discussed.
Right. You will only have 120 days to bring your firearms into compliance. ATF warns Americans with pistol braces are likely already violating the National Firearms Act by possessing an unregistered rifle with a barrel less than 16 inches. So they're saying you got to register it. But even if you're doing that, you are most likely already in violation of the Firearms Act, which is a felony.
Oh, just that.
Yeah.
Now, Glenn, this feels like the type of thing the courts will get a hold of and say, no, of course you can't do that. Obviously you can't do that.
Right.
Now, I hate depending on that because it seems like it's the last barrier between us and insanity over and over and over again, and eventually it's not going to work.
Okay, so here's the thing. If this stands, what's to stop them from saying, because Joe Biden's already said it, there's no reason for semi-automatic handguns.
Yeah.
Almost every gun in America is a semi-automatic. All that means is that it's not a revolver. Okay?
Yeah.
We used to have, like the Cowboys, they had 6 bullets in a revolver. They just, back in the 1800s period, they redesigned the revolver. And you got the 911 handgun, which just loads instead of a circle in a line underneath.
Yeah,
He's now saying...
It's every gun. I mean, for people who don't know guns, it's basically every gun you buy.
Every gun.
What is it, 85%, 90% of guns?
At least. I think you have to buy old-timey guns.
There's shotguns, I guess. I mean, there's a couple of...
Well, my shotgun is semi-automatic.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, the typical shotgun, I guess you wouldn't describe that way.
Right.
But there's a few. But it's very rare.
So... what's to stop them from just saying, oh, by the way, you have to register all of your semi-automatics, and if you don't get the tax stamp, then you're committing a felony. This cannot happen. It cannot happen.
Nixon looked at this closely to try to make all handguns illegal back when he was president. Again, this is not all Democrats. This is a progressivism problem. And goes back to even the Nixon administration, where he, on the Nixon tapes, mused about how he wanted to get rid of all handguns, how to get rid of all of them. You think that these guys aren't doing the same thing? If Nixon was doing it, you don't think these guys have updated this approach? And this is obviously a first step in that direction. Clearly, if they get away with this, they'll do it with other models.
So here's the ATF director. He said last week, the rule prevents people from circumventing the laws Congress passed almost a century ago. Now, people are saying he's redefining rifle. You can't redefine, what a rifle is. He says... almost a century ago, Congress determined that short-barreled rifles must be subject to heightened requirements. Today's rule makes clear firearm manufacturers, dealers, and individuals cannot evade these important public safety protections simply by adding accessories to pistols that transform them into short-barreled rifles. But the same ATF determined in 2012 that pistol braces do not alter the classification of a pistol or other firearm. So, do we listen to the ATF then or listen to the ATF now? Because that was 2012. That wasn't under Trump. That was under Obama. So which one is right? Do we follow the science? Is the new science the right science? Don't eat butter, don't eat butter, eat butter. This is insanity. This is insanity.
If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe to our channel so you'll be sure to see similar videos from BlazeTV with the added bonus of signaling YouTube that your voice and opinion still matters. And if you're looking for more great conservative content, check out one of the 2 videos suggested here.